You will see here heads of governments, heads of states, but the real force we have is our private sector. And I'm extremely happy at this summit to have more than 120 of our finest companies who are present here, who will be working together between them, but also often in a public-private partnership, to making sure that we can realize the things that we announce. Very often when we announce things, it's very good. When you realize them, this is where we really make the effort. So I would like to thank all of you, and I will start with giving the word to Mette. You did an incredible effort last year in organizing it in Ashburg. We were really impressed by the gigantic turbines. We wanted to show something which was a bit impressive as well, which is our ships. But really happy, Mette, to have you back here and that you started this initiative.
Thank you so much. Last year we met in Esbjerg in Denmark to kickstart our political vision for the North Sea as a green power plant for Europe. And thank you, Alexander, for inviting us today to take our vision further on now. I think today we are taking an important step in realizing our common ambition. 9 countries from the North Sea region are committed to offshore wind and green transition as the future of our energy supply in our countries. We are raising the bar. 300 gigawatt of offshore wind in the North Sea by 2050, the largest electricity system in Europe. It's offshore, it's green, and it is European. Last week, the Danish government committed to an even faster build-out of offshore wind. A 5-fold increase in production from offshore wind. We are speeding up green transition in Denmark. And I think all of us need to speed up our green ambitions for, of course, a number of good reasons. First of all, because of Russia's brutal war in Ukraine, it has made it absolutely clear that we need to produce more energy ourselves. We urgently need to combat climate change for a second reason, and more green energy will strengthen our energy security as Europeans, and of course also provide reliable energy prices for our households and for our businesses. But there are still some barriers to the green transition. We must secure our supply chains. We have to build the European industry stronger. We need to reduce the bureaucratic rules. And we have to align what we want when it comes to biodiversity and the environment and the ambitions we have on climate. I think all these are important discussions we also have to do with our businesses. So we need to keep on going forward. We have to do it together. And this is what we seek to do today here. So thank you once again, Alexander, for inviting us.
Thank you, Mette. Ursula, I talked about the leadership role you take, and you've led us through the different crises. This crisis is one which we can use to make a step forward, and really happy that you that with plans like the Green Deal and so on, you've shown the direction. Extremely happy to have you here among us.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Thank you very much for inviting me and for hosting us here in Ostende, the city by the sea. Mm-hmm. And indeed, as you said, a lot has changed and improved since last year when we had our first meeting in Esbjerg. We should not forget it was the year of a severe energy crisis that was triggered by the Russian war. But we have managed together to get rid of our dependency on Russian fossil fuels. We have diversified away from Russia to reliable partners. The European people have saved 20% of their energy consumption, but most importantly, we have massively invested in renewables. So despite this crisis, we managed to keep the economy growing on one hand, but on the other hand, we were able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Two figures are here important. While globally the greenhouse gas emission did rise last year by 1%, in the European Union the greenhouse gas emission were reduced by 2.5%. In other words, there was a formidable boost in this year of crisis to renewable production in the European Union. We have doubled the additional deployment of renewable energy last year, and we have, for the very first time, generated more electricity from wind and sun compared to gas. Renewables are crucial for us to reach our goals in 2050. It's all about speeding up. And as you know, the European Union has just raised its 2030 targets for renewables from 32% up to more than 42%. So I very strongly welcome the Ostend Declaration. It's great. It's doubling down on the targets set in Iceberg for offshore wind production. And it will give us all the wind we need in our sails to set the course onto climate neutrality. The European Commission will help to deliver on these targets. And this is why we have the Green Deal Industrial Plan. All our proposals to implement this industrial plan are on the table now. First, the Net Zero Industry Act that will help to create a conducive environment for clean tech industry. It will support innovation and, very important, the manufacturing at scale of clean tech. Second, our reform of the electricity market design will incentivize the use of renewable compared to fossil fuels. And third, our Critical Raw Materials Act aims at securing the supply of the materials that are so badly needed to build wind turbines and other clean tech. One very last point on renewable hydrogen. I'm very glad that we have stepped up the ambition on renewable hydrogen. Green hydrogen can be the game changer for Europe, our industries, and our economy. And the North Sea region has the potential to produce massive amounts of green hydrogen and to become the main corridor for imports. So, of course, I am very happy, and I would like to invite the countries here today to work on cross-border hydrogen projects. The Commission is ready to support as much as possible, and in parallel, we will make sure that the hydrogen bank that we will create is operational by the end of this year to create a full-fledged European hydrogen market. So in sum, Europe has become the house of renewables, and the North Sea is becoming the powerhouse of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Alors, Emmanuel, quel plaisir que la France vient de rejoindre la coalition de la mer du Nord, un pays avec tellement d'expertise au niveau d'énergie et qui voit le potentiel des éoliennes, et donc extrêmement heureux de t'avoir ici à Ostende.
Merci beaucoup, merci Monsieur le Premier ministre, cher Alexander, pour l'accueil, et heureux d'être ici à Ostende, et merci Madame la Première ministre, cher Metteux, d'avoir initié cette alliance. En effet, beaucoup de choses ont été dites, mais à neuf et avec le soutien de la Commission européenne, je crois que la stratégie qui est déployée ici est cohérente avec notre triple objectif. Plus de souveraineté, tenir nos objectifs en matière de climat et continuer à défendre l'industrie européenne. Et ces trois objectifs sont conciliables en déployant des programmes tels que celui-ci. Avec en effet cette volonté commune de produire 300 gigawatts à hauteur de 2050 et des coopérations dans tous les domaines, nous nous mettons en capacité de produire en européen par nous-mêmes justement cette électricité décarbonée et de réduire notre dépendance à des tiers et de le faire conformément à nos objectifs climatiques. À cela s'ajoute le fait qu'un tel objectif s'appuie et doit s'appuyer de manière croissante sur une expertise européenne. Et il nous faut consolider, je crois que c'est l'une des forces des coopérations qui se nouent ici et de ce que nous voulons faire avec la Commission, eh bien, en amont comme en aval, la capacité à renforcer les industriels européens. Gagner en souveraineté, en autonomie sur les matériaux critiques et tout ce qu'il faut pour produire et assembler ces éoliennes, avoir un assemblage européen et avoir des industriels européens, nous venons d'ailleurs de le voir en termes de dragage, qui sont associés à la construction de ces grands équipements. Et derrière, eh bien, cette capacité de production nous permettra de produire de l'hydrogène vert européen pour nos industries. Et je crois que ce qui est important derrière cette stratégie, au-delà de la production d'énergie décarbonée européenne, c'est d'avoir une approche très cohérente et de se dire nous voulons une industrie européenne pour la produire. Et ne pas répliquer parfois les erreurs que nous avons pu faire il y a quelques décennies, où quand nous avons massivement déployé, par exemple, du photovoltaïque, nous avons importé beaucoup des matériaux dont nous avions besoin. C'est une opportunité donc en termes de résilience, de souveraineté et de Made in Europe auquel nous croyons. La France s'inscrit dans cette stratégie avec un objectif de 40 gigawatts pour ce qui nous concerne, un pacte éolien en mer qui a été signé il y a maintenant un an avec un investissement massif de 40 milliards d'euros sur les 15 prochaines années, 20 000 emplois répartis sur tout le territoire français, en particulier dans l'industrie de l'assemblage d'éoliennes sur notre sol. La clé derrière tout cela, et je crois que justement notre capacité à agir en Européen sera déterminante, c'est d'accélérer les projets et leur déploiement. Un dernier mot pour dire que pour accompagner cette stratégie, il nous faut poursuivre, comme la Commission l'a lancé, une réforme du marché électrique européen et il nous faudra développer encore plus avant les interconnexions électriques européennes, qui est un élément clé pour nous rendre encore plus efficaces. Merci beaucoup, Alexandre.
Merci. Dear Olaf, you know the Belgian coast quite well by now. A few months ago you were in Zeebrugge to visit our LNG infrastructure. We've had a very long-standing partnership on the energy domain, and I'm sure that maintaining economic activity and definitely heavy industry in Europe is for you also a priority.
Schönen Dank. Schönen Dank für die Initiative, dass wir hier fortsetzen, was in Esbjerg begonnen hat, und auch für die ganze Arbeit, die damit verbunden ist, denn es ist in der Tat ein ganz wichtiges Ereignis, das uns hier zusammenführt. Ich will kurz erläutern, warum die Initiative so wichtig ist. Erstens, die vergangenen Monate haben eindrucksvoll gezeigt, wie zentral es ist, dass wir in Europa in Energiefragen eng zusammenarbeiten. Denn wir sind auf unserem Kontinent und natürlich auch auf den Inseln, die davor liegen, darauf angewiesen, dass wir miteinander eng verbunden sind. Die Energieleitungen sind Lebensadern Europas. Wir produzieren Energie längst nicht mehr nur für uns selbst, sondern auch für unsere Nachbarn und umgekehrt. Nach dem russischen Überfall auf die Ukraine mussten wir uns unabhängig machen von Energieleistungen aus Russland. Das haben wir geschafft mit Unterstützung unserer Freunde und Nachbarn. Und ich bin dafür unverändert sehr dankbar. Das hat mich ja auch das letzte Mal nach Zeebrugge geführt und an viele andere Orte. Zweitens gehen wir eine noch größere Herausforderung jetzt sehr entschlossen an. Wir wollen in Deutschland bis 2045 klimaneutral wirtschaften, unsere Energie aus Windkraft, Solarenergie und Biomasse gewinnen und auf fossile Energien verzichten zum Schutz unseres Klimas. Windenergie auf See birgt dafür ein ganz, ganz großes Potenzial. Und mit der Nordsee haben wir das Energie-Powerhouse quasi vor der Haustür. Seit unserem Treffen im vergangenen Jahr in Esbjerg ist unser Kreis hier deutlich größer geworden, wie man ja an diesem breiten Podium ganz gut sehen kann. Gemeinsam wollen wir die Energie der Nordsee erschließen und bis 2030 ca. 120 Gigawatt Offshore-Windparks installieren. Dafür haben wir auch schon eine große Reihe wichtiger Entscheidungen getroffen. National und auch auf europäischer Ebene haben wir den Rahmen für den Ausbau der erneuerbaren Energien deutlich verbessert und die Verfahren beschleunigt. Ich bin ganz besonders der Europäischen Kommission dankbar für die entsprechenden Gesetzesvorschläge, die wir voranbringen konnten. Gemeinsam diskutieren wir regelmäßig in der Nordsee-Energiekooperation, wie wir den Ausbau der Windenergie und der Netze weiter voranbringen können. Unsere Netzbetreiber erarbeiten Konzepte, um Offshore-Strom und Wasserstoff an den Küsten zu nutzen, ihn dort zu produzieren, anzulanden, was den Wasserstoff betrifft. Bei aller Ambition müssen wir drittens aber auch ehrlich genug sagen, die Herausforderungen bleiben groß, sie sind immens und es bleibt noch eine ganze Reihe zu tun. Vor allem, wir müssen schneller werden. Bei der Identifikation von Flächen, bei Genehmigungen, beim Bau von Anlagen und Netzen dürfen wir keine Zeit mehr verlieren. Und gerade wenn wir jetzt genau sehen, welche ungeheuren Möglichkeiten der Stromproduktion und der Wasserstoffproduktion die Nordsee bietet und gleichzeitig wissen, dass oft die industriellen Zentren, die diesen Strom benötigen, gar nicht direkt an der Küste liegen, sondern viele davon zum Beispiel in Deutschland im Südwesten der Republik, dann ist es wichtig, dass wir die Struktur des Netzausbaus immer mitdenken und auch im Blick haben, dass das genauso schnell vorangehen muss, wie die Stromproduktion anläuft. Und das ist etwas, was wir zustande bringen müssen. Wir müssen auch größer denken. Es braucht mehr Anlagen. Wir müssen dafür die notwendigen Lieferketten stärken. Und deshalb brauchen wir gerade hier in Europa eine starke Zulieferindustrie. Ich bin sehr dankbar, dass hier in dem Business-Treffen sehr viele Unternehmen aus Europa, auch aus Deutschland, anwesend sind, dass sie mitarbeiten, dass sie mithelfen werden, dass wir das, was an industrieller Produktion notwendig ist, um diese Sachen mit unseren eigenen Fähigkeiten und Technologien voranzubringen, dass sie das zeigen und dass wir das voranbringen können. Und schließlich, wir müssen besser werden. Die raue See erfordert Innovationen, um Wind und Wasserstoff nutzbar zu machen. Und wir müssen, heute ist ein Beispiel dafür, mehr kooperieren. Davon kann ganz Europa profitieren. Und schließlich, auch das hat das letzte Jahr auf brachiale Weise gezeigt, wir müssen unsere Offshore-Industrie effektiv schützen. Hier spielen wir als Anrainer, aber auch die EU und die NATO eine wichtige Rolle. All das wird nur gemeinsam gehen. Und das Treffen hier in Ostende ist ein wichtiger Schritt auf diesem gemeinsamen Weg. Die Erklärung, die wir gleich unterzeichnen, macht das noch einmal deutlich. Und deshalb nochmal vielen Dank, Alexander, für die Einladung und Organisation. Es ist schön, wieder an der Nordsee zu sein. Als früherer Hamburger Bürgermeister weiß ich, das Meer verbindet die Welt. Unsere Verbindung, liebe Freundinnen und Freunde, ist stark und wir profitieren alle davon. An die Arbeit.
Thank you, Olaf. Dear Leo, you're not really a North Sea country either. But wind energy is something which Ireland knows extremely well, mostly onshore up to now, but the offshore potential, of course, is a huge one, and extremely happy that you're part of this coalition now as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alexander. Agus Garmaga Tom an Osach Fen Shaw in Ostend anew. Con an Ostend Declaration of Shinu, Harkian Realtus Naheran, Agus Winter Naheran, our son Royd Agus, our son on Tauki. My thanks to Alexander for the invitation to be here at today's summit and the opportunity for us in Ireland to join the Ostend Declaration. And I really want to thank Belgium for its leadership in taking this initiative, but also when it comes to renewable energy. As I flew in this morning, it was fascinating to see the number of buildings here in Ostend that have solar panels on their roofs, small buildings and large buildings, and also to see the amount of offshore wind that Belgium has already. So I think you're showing a lot of leadership already. I believe our attendance here at this meeting, 8 governments, the European Commission, the United Kingdom represented as well at ministerial level, and 120 companies, shows a very real shared commitment to accelerating the transition to a green energy future and harnessing the immense potential of offshore renewables. When it comes to climate, the science is very clear. The facts are also very clear on the ground. Our world is getting warmer. Severe weather events are becoming more frequent, and we have no time to waste in acting. We have to be the generation that turns the tide on climate change and biodiversity. Some of you will know Mary Robinson, former President of Ireland and former UN High Commissioner for Refugees, and she says, or human rights rather, and she says that there are 2 things that we're on the cusp of. One is we're on the cusp of climate disaster. The other is that we're on the cusp of deploying the technological advances that allow us to avoid all of that. And we need to make sure that one gets ahead of the other, that we make the changes necessary before it's too late. And I think, as others have said, that's really reinforced by what's happening with Russia and the extent to which energy has been weaponized. So today's discussions are going to be with industry reps, and will emphasise the development of supply chains needed to honour and achieve our renewable energy objectives. We're already making significant progress with the framework on the North Sea's energy cooperation, and a memorandum of understanding between its members and the UK is now in place. And today's Ostend Declaration allows us to go beyond the North Sea to the wider North Seas, including the Irish Sea, the Celtic Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. And Ireland as a country is relatively small, but our seas are 7 times greater than our landmass, and that's what we hope to bring to tabled here today. We also must ensure that biodiversity is protected in whatever we do, that our rural, local and coastal communities benefit from opportunities and also the green jobs that will arise. So really looking forward to working closely with our regional partners and the European Commission to build the offshore grids and electricity interconnection that will benefit us all. And that's going to enable us to trade offshore renewable energy with the rest of Europe, but most of all for our citizens at home and our businesses, ensuring that we have security of supply and affordable and predictable prices into the future, and all done with the benefit to our environment. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Xavier, ce que beaucoup de gens ne savent pas, c'est l'investissement historique que le Luxembourg a toujours fait dans le renouvelable et le rôle que vous avez joué déjà dans la mer du Nord. Et cette invitation, naturellement, est surtout une invitation pour en faire encore davantage.
Oui, comme toujours. Merci pour l'invitation, cher Alexander. Oui, certains d'entre vous, c'est la première question qu'ils m'ont posée quand je suis arrivé, mais qu'est-ce que vous faites ici ? Alors, vous devez savoir que ce n'est pas nouveau que Luxembourg participe à des projets. Je tiens à remercier Mette d'avoir lancé cette initiative ici avec ces pays autour de la table. Le Danemark est le premier pays avec qui nous avons signé justement aussi un accord où le Luxembourg investit avec le Danemark dans l'offshore et qui nous permet donc d'avoir aussi une sécurité jusqu'en 2025, aussi à partir de 2025 concernant l'énergie renouvelable. L'énergie renouvelable est quelque chose dans lequel mon pays croit et je dois vous dire que les efforts qui ont été faits sont importants. Nous avons triplé la production d'énergie éolienne au cours des 6 dernières années et nous constatons aussi un succès particulier dans le système d'énergie solaire où en 2021 nous avons installé 15 fois plus d'unités qu'encore en 2016. Ich habe auch bei der letzten Rede, die ich gehalten habe über die Lage der Nation in Luxemburg, auch angekündigt, und das hat der Leo vorher gesagt, als er mit dem Flieger hier über Ostend geflogen ist, wie viele Solarenergie hier in Ostend auf den Häusern auch installiert sind. Und wir sind der Überzeugung, dass heutzutage auch die Wahl, um mitzumachen, soll kein Luxus sein. Wir haben es auch angekündigt, dass der Staat auch den Leuten eine Solarpanel-Möglichkeit auch installiert und dann wird es während einer gewissen Zeit der Staat die Produktion bekommen und dann nachher werden wir es ermöglichen, dass die Leute es dann zurückbekommen, anstatt zu leihen. Das gibt es ja auch in verschiedenen Ländern, wo dann der Staat zum Beispiel auch ein Dach anmietet und hier ist dann die Möglichkeit, dass die Leute nach einer gewissen Zeit dann auch das Material dann bekommen. Wir sind jetzt bei der ganzen Analyse, um zu sehen, ob es sich rentiert oder nicht, aber wie gesagt, im Moment ist noch in Europa die Solarenergie aber Ausnahme, wenn man mit dem Flieger über eine Hauptstadt oder eine Stadt fliegt und es soll für uns, die Ausnahme soll sein, dass nichts drauf ist in Zukunft. The problem that we have is when we see if it's the solar energy or if it's also the wind energy, that the production, and I'm very happy that also some of the colleagues raised up the topic. We see that the energy production, we are very dependent. We saw it with Russia coming from one kind of the products. Now we see with the LNG, even it's trusted partners, but it comes from the other side of the world, or from the south, or from the west. And so I think it's very important that if we want to continue in that we also take it as a priority. Solar panels, we were leaders. We were leaders. Now China is a leader. When we see also the turbines, we have, if you look, the biggest companies, very few are European companies. The Chinese, again. We have a relation with China which is for the moment okay, but can tomorrow also be less good. If that's the fact, again, we need really strategic autonomy on our economy and also putting priority on the production of European, made in Europe, also on the capacities of the needed machine and engines to do it. So I just want to thank you again for inviting us here. We see all of us that the climate crisis, is something I remember we watched it on TV. It was in Nicaragua, it was in Australia, it was in New Zealand. It's now, it's in Europe. And it's not yesterday or tomorrow or in 5 years. It is now that we have to act. And even if it's not too late. So I really hope that we will continue. You can count on Luxembourg. And as you said before, we already have a project, we signed with Denmark, and you will have we don't I have to admit, we don't have the Luxembourgish Sea, and the Moselle and the Sauer is not big enough to have windmills on them. But if we are useful, we will continue to be useful. And this is also an invitation for other colleagues who have no seas. You don't need to have the seas. If you have capacities to do common things, we will make bigger things together. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you. Mark, die Noordzee die delen wij tussen België en Nederland en heel veel activiteiten op die Noordzee. Ja, daar zijn we heel sterk met elkaar verbonden. Zoals in zoveel thema's waar heel vaak landen als België, Nederland en Luxemburg samen met elkaar optrekken. Dus heel blij om jou hier te hebben en om al die Nederlandse expertise in economische activiteiten in de Noordzee, om die deel te hebben van onze coalitie.
Dank je, Alexander. On a working visit to the second Maasvlakte in Rotterdam last week, I personally saw how much work energy companies and grid operators are already doing to prepare us for a fossil-free future. They are building wind farms, they are starting operations and developing at the same time the infrastructure we need so that Europe can benefit from the North Sea as a natural source of energy. The Lion Link project, which we are announcing today, and it is to connect the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, is a good example of these efforts. And they are sorely needed. As you said, Leo Varadkar from Ireland, the IPCC's recent work shows we need to step up our climate efforts. And that means moving towards sustainable energy supplies. I would also add that the Russian invasion of Ukraine has made this all the more urgent. We have to make sure Putin no longer has the means to exert pressure on us by turning off the gas tap. And producing clean energy is the best way to achieve this. And the enormous potential of the North Sea region is indispensable here. And thank you, Ursula von der Leyen from the European Commission, that you are willing to do everything to support that whole endeavor. And that's why it's good that we've come together here in Oostende. We're following up on the first and successful North Sea Summit under Mette Frederiksen's leadership in Esbjerg last year. And that France, Luxembourg, the United Kingdom, Norway and Ireland are joining us today in our ambition to turn the North Sea into the green engine of Europe. And with Ireland and with Luxembourg, we are now moving beyond the North Sea, but still discussing the North Sea. And Jonas, you being here from Norway, but also the United Kingdom now being part of this group means also that we are moving beyond a little bit the European Union in its strict borders. And by expanding now this North Sea coalition, we are also boosting, I believe, our joint efforts. Last year, the Netherlands, we already raised our national target to 21 gigawatts by 2030, and that's almost 80% of our current total electricity consumption. But here's an important point. If we are really to produce our own wind turbines and batteries in Europe, we indeed, as Emmanuel Macron said, we need to be less dependent on one single supplier for our critical raw materials. And it is Olaf Scholz who is consistently pleading to remove barriers in permitting procedures so we can speed up our energy projects. It's important here, I believe, that we strike the right balance between nature, fisheries and energy. It's not only North Sea countries that today's agreements are connecting. We can also see and use the North Sea wind energy to produce green hydrogen, which could provide renewable energy to other countries in Europe. So I really believe, Alexander, that meetings like today are vital in this, to share plans and see where we can join forces. So I'm looking forward to our discussions, but again, thank you for organizing this follow-up meeting and to bring us together here, but also for the very warm welcome you provide us. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear Jonas, you've been a long-term partner of the European Union in all questions related to energy, and especially last year. And I think there's a warm thank you from all of us in the role that Norway has played in helping us to get through this crisis. But there's so much more that we can do. And I'm really looking forward to have you part of this coalition with all the possibilities you have in offshore wind, but actually much more than that.
Thank you, Alexander. It's good to be the new kid on the block. with my friends around this North Sea emerging biggest energy region potentially in the world. Norway is, as you said, the largest provider of energy to Europe. That situation was emphasized during this last year. We've been able to increase our export of gas by some 8 to 10%. That represent 100 terawatt hours of extra energy into Europe. And we will be able to maintain that for the next few years so that we can forward the transition. But we have a lot more to contribute because we have a coastline and we have wind and we have expertise in building heavy things that can stand the pressure from wind and oceans. So we are engaging into offshore wind enthusiastically. And today, this morning, Ursula, we signed a green alliance between Norway and the European Union. We worked on that for a year. Norway has integrated our objectives to reach Paris obligations with the European Union. These are our partners. We have integrated economies. So we want to reach the targets with the European Union partners. And with this green alliance, we really exemplify how to do that. And one important part is to take this paradox of Russia's invasion. It has actually accelerated Europe's independence towards energy security with the renewable push. And we want to be part of that. So there are a lot of dimensions here where we have expertise. Offshore wind, especially the floating windmills, which have to build on expertise from heavy structures out offshore. Hydrogen production, be it green, or in the intermediary time blue, namely by gas, where we extract the CO2, store it 2,000 meters under the seabed, and Norway has done that for 20, 30 years. We know the technology and how to do it. So our ambitions are also high. By 2040, we aim for 30 gigawatt. That is about 1,500 windmills. And for what is linked to the southern part of Norway, we want to see that in a North Sea perspective, and then we will follow up along our coast towards the Barents Sea and Arctic waters, because we also need this energy there. I would also like to emphasize that we as governments should help push this industry to get off the ground. But the key here and the core is the private sector. And I would like to salute you, Alexander, for having followed up what Mette did last year in Esbjerg. And here it is even more impressive, the number of companies with world-class expertise. I'm happy to see there are 10 to 15 Norwegian companies, and they will contribute actively in the side events which are around here. So we are building value chains. They are European, they are North Sea, and they will really make a difference. Norway is really happy to be part of it, and I hope that we will be able to one day invite you to a similar gathering at our shores, and then we will make the windmills turn. Thank you.
Thank you. After all of this, you might have some questions, but before we go to the questions, we will proceed to the signing of the Ostend Declaration. And so two representatives of the Ostend Youth City Council, Lens and Chiara, will bring you the declaration and will ask each one of you to sign it. Give them an applause, first of all.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Give them another applause. Doing this. Excellent job. Ostend Declaration, to summarize it, from announcement to implementation for a greener, a more sustainable, and a more independent Europe.
Hey.
All right.
Let's
Are
take
there
some
any
questions.
Please take it over, Bram.
I have a first question from Jelle Frenke, VTM.
Prime Minister, Belgium is considering a legal procedure against France concerning the construction of a wind farm in the North Sea at Dunkirk. That's not really a proof of collaboration and stepping up ambition. What is your position on that legal procedure? And more broadly, what are the concrete measures or deals you have now that the action will speed up? In advance, you said that it has to go further than only showing ambitions. What are these concrete steps?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, in planning offshore wind parks, we need to talk. And between Belgium and France, we're in very intensive talks on this new very big windmill park off the coast of Dunkirk. And I'm quite sure we will come to an agreement which is satisfying for both countries. When I say from announcement to action, what we need to do is to standardize and industrialize. This offshore wind industry is one which is very much innovation driven. It will remain innovation driven. But the biggest gain today is in speeding up the building. If we want to speed up the building, you need to standardize it. That means standardizing the zoning, standardizing the tendering, standardizing also the security measures that we need to take to secure these industries, standardizing the financial model, which makes it easier to finance it, and then synchronize between us. If we decide to build all at the same time, the industry gets in trouble. If we plan it in the right way, we can scale up. Today, we have a capacity to build approximately 7 gigawatts per year. If we want to achieve our ambitions, we need to get to 20 gigawatts per year. It is possible with our private sectors, but we need to help. And this is, to me, the main goal of this summit, is announcement, yes, but especially synchronizing better and making sure that together we can go from announcement to speed.
I have a second question by Ole Rieborg, DR.
Ole Ryborg, Danmarks Radio. Last week, a documentary by 4 television stations from Denmark, Sweden, Norway and Finland documented how Russian vessels have been mapping the locations of all windmill farms in the whole of Scandinavia, along the coast down to Belgium and Holland and all the way to Britain, and I think they've even been in Ireland. So my question to you is, you've now been talking about how you are going to develop the North Sea as the powerhouse, but what are you going to do to protect that infrastructure? For von der Leyen, the EU directive for 2008 about infrastructure is quite old and not done to this. So how are you going to change this to increase the protection of the windmills that you do? And even I'm curious about the Franco-German engine in all this. Is this a national thing as it is today, or do you foresee that in the future we need European cooperation, even European military cooperation, or in other ways, in order to protect these wind farms that we do in the North Sea? Thank you.
Yes, we have followed the situation very closely because we know that our critical infrastructure is under threat, and we know it since we have experienced the sabotage of Nord Stream pipeline last year. So this is the reason why we have stepped up in the European Union our actions concerning preparedness, concerning the response and the cooperation that is possible. Cooperation between member states, of course, as you said, on an EU level. Here we are at the moment working on a stress test program for the worst case, mainly in the infrastructure, We had a first stock taking in April, and we will take the results to identify our weaknesses, but of course also strengthen our resilience. The second part, which is very important, is not only the European Union is working on this topic, but we are teaming up with NATO. And with NATO, we have created a joint task force, basically working on the same principles I've just explained, but it includes the whole possible range of threats, for example, also the topic of cyber threats concerning our key sectors, and namely also, of course, energy. The EU-NATO experts are at the moment working on a program for coordinated resilience, and the results of this we will present to you, the leaders, at the NATO summit, which will then take place in July. So you see, we've really stepped up because we know it's crucial and critical that we are up to date there.
Just one word to say that we do believe this is a matter of security for all of us. So we are available, and by the way, we coordinated this type of effort with Norway and some other players when it happened indeed a few months ago. And we are still available. It's part of our national defense strategy to be precisely involved in the defense of critical infrastructures for energy and telecommunications. And it's part as well of the topics we put on the table on this European political community in Prague. It raised as one of the critical topics, and this is something we will discuss in Chisinau as well with all the players.
It seems that the concept of... Oh, sorry, please go ahead.
Not much to add from my side, just saying that we already invited NATO and European Union to work on this topic, which Ursula von der Leyen already reported, and they are already working to find a procedure how we cooperate in this field. And also on the national level, we took a lot of decisions how we will be more able to understand the situation and all the dangers, cooperating with others, especially with Norway in one case. And so you can be sure this is a question of high priority.
It seems that the concept of scientific research is quite a broad one in the North Sea. But this is one of the topics which is part of this Ostend Declaration, is that we need to look at building insecurity by design. I think the new investments we do in offshore wind, in cables, in pipelines need to be secured by design. This was not a priority 15 years ago. It's quite clear that it will be a priority in the years to come.
Next question is by Alexandra von Namen, Deutsche Welle.
Thank you very much for the question. A question maybe to the Danish Prime Minister. Can you tell us more about the results of the investigation in the Nord Stream pipeline attack? Because it's been a while, we're not getting any results, and don't you think that not showing a complete transparency that could be playing into Putin's hands? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. As you probably know, there's still an investigation going on this topic. It was quite dramatically when we found out about it. But the investigation is not finished yet, and therefore the authorities are not able yet to say a word about it. And we don't know when the results will be there or if there will be a result, so we have to wait a bit more. Well, I think a lot of us have been asking questions about, since the beginning of the war, will this be in the hands of Putin? Will this support the wordings from Moscow? And in all questions, I don't believe in that way of seeing it, because if the authorities are not capable of saying anything about the investigation yet, then they are not ready to do it. And in our countries, we have to respect, of course, that the authorities have some measures and have some decisions to make, and the political level have other measures and other decisions to make. So, no, I don't agree with you, but the investigation is still going on.
A question from Pierre Benazet, Radio France.
Oui, j'ai une question. Monsieur le Président, vous avez On a parlé, le chancelier allemand a parlé de l'identification des sites pour les parcs d'éoliennes en mer. Est-ce que ça ne va pas être un gros défi pour la France qui part de très loin? Il va falloir trouver des arrangements et trouver des définitions sur la biodiversité, partager la mer avec les transporteurs, avec les pêcheurs et avec les riverains. Et puis, pour rebondir sur ce que vous avez dit en arrivant, vous estimez que les propos de l'ambassadeur chinois en France sont déplacés. On parle de souveraineté des pays baltes, mais on parle aussi de la souveraineté de l'Ukraine sur la Crimée. On est toujours dans cette question de sécurité et de souveraineté. Est-ce que vous avez des propos européens à ce sujet? Et est-ce que vous avez l'intention vous-même de retourner en Ukraine bientôt?
Merci beaucoup. Sur votre deuxième question, je crois qu'il y a une clarté de tous les Européens sur ces sujets pour éviter ces propos excessifs. Et il y a une condamnation unanime des pays qui étaient concernés comme de l'ensemble de nos ministères des Affaires étrangères. Évidemment, je retournerai dans les prochaines semaines, prochains mois, dès que nous aurons défini avec les partenaires européens et le président Zelensky le bon moment en Ukraine. Et à chaque fois, j'ai veillé à avoir une approche utile, c'est-à-dire être présent en Ukraine pour apporter des résultats ou à des moments qui étaient décisifs. Comme vous le savez, j'ai eu il y a 10 jours au téléphone le président Zelensky pour faire un point sur nos envois justement de munitions et d'armes et aussi lui rendre compte des discussions que j'avais pu avoir en Chine. Pour ce qui est de votre première question, nous avons lancé cette stratégie reposant sur l'économie d'énergie, le nucléaire et le renouvelable il y a maintenant un peu plus d'un an et demi. Elle s'est déclinée par un pacte éolien en mer en mars 2022 et l'attribution de 20 gigawatts d'ici à 2030. Et donc ce pacte a commencé à préidentifier des lieux au-delà de ceux qui faisaient déjà l'objet de développement et investir 40 milliards d'euros au cours des 15 ans à venir sur ce sujet. Et donc dans le cadre de la planification qui sera annoncée avant avant le début juillet, nous aurons à déployer justement sur de nombreux sites cette stratégie dont l'objectif, comme je le disais tout à l'heure, est d'avoir une capacité de production de 40 gigawatts à horizon 2050. Et donc c'est de poursuivre l'effort qui a été annoncé il y a un an. Vous l'avez très bien dit, le défi, et c'est le cas d'ailleurs pour tous les collègues, c'est d'identifier des sites qui sont compatibles avec les éléments de biodiversité, les tracés pour justement les activités commerciales et l'activité des pêcheurs. Ce qui apparaît clairement, c'est que nous avons une capacité de le faire en planifiant et donc en prévoyant, et nous avons d'autant plus de capacité que nous avons 4 grandes façades maritimes, ce qui nous donne aussi une liberté, si je puis dire, de choix, une capacité à négocier plus large. Donc oui, l'objectif que j'ai donné est bien celui que nous délivrerons et sur lequel nous avons des capacités à faire.
Theresa Münch from DPA for the next question, please.
Meine Frage richtet sich an Kanzler Scholz. Sich ambitionierte Ziele zu setzen, ist ja immer einfach, aber in der letzten Zeit ist beim Ausbau von Windenergie auf See nicht so richtig viel zusammengegangen in Deutschland und auch in Europa. Was macht Sie so zuversichtlich, dass es diesmal anders kommt, dass jetzt so richtig Schubkraft reinkommt?
Schönen Dank für die Frage. In der Tat, der Ausbau der Windenergie an Land und auf hoher See ist in den letzten Jahren nicht mit dem Tempo vorangegangen, das wir gebraucht hätten. Deshalb haben wir auf nationaler Ebene in Deutschland, aber auch auf europäischer Ebene jetzt sehr, sehr viele Gesetze geändert oder sind dabei, sehr viele Gesetze zu ändern, um genau dieses Tempo zu erreichen. Und es gibt aber einen klaren Maßstab. Wenn wir an die europäischen Regulierungen, die wir heute haben, denken und wenn wir an die deutschen Regeln, die wir heute haben, denken, werden wir keines unserer Ausbauziele erreichen, wenn wir sie nicht ändern. Und deshalb ist es notwendig, dass wir das tun. Darüber besteht aber auch ein großer Konsens bei den europäischen Regierungschefs. Da besteht ein großer Konsens auch im Parlament. Und wir haben jedenfalls in Deutschland unbedingt diesen Willen dazu. Deshalb gehen wir jetzt auch anders vor. Wenn das Ziel für Deutschland ist, 80% des Stroms 2030 aus erneuerbaren Energien zu produzieren, bedeutet das, dass wir genau ausrechnen können, wie viel Offshore-Wind aus der Nordsee, wie viel Wind onshore in Deutschland, wie viel Solarpaneele in Deutschland, wie viel Stromleitung in Deutschland und wie viel Elektrolyse dazu notwendig sind. Und auch, wie viele Importkapazitäten für Wasserstoff wir brauchen. Und weil das jetzt möglich ist, wir das auch öffentlich sagen können und auch verfolgen können, werden wir das Tempo auch erreichen. Das heutige Treffen ist deshalb besonders wertvoll, weil wir uns nicht nur als Regierung treffen, sondern weil wir auch gleich mit der Wirtschaft sprechen. Denn wir müssen ja sagen, jetzt geht's los, jetzt findet das statt, jetzt gewinnen wir die Geschwindigkeit, die wir dazu brauchen. Und während wir das tun und während wir Gesetze ändern und Planungen ausbauen, um das zu erreichen, muss in dem gleichen Augenblick überall in Europa in Unternehmenszentralen die Entscheidung getroffen werden, wir setzen da drauf, das wird wirklich passieren, wir bauen unsere Kapazitäten aus, wir investieren in Forschung und Entwicklung. Und diesen gemeinsamen Moment, den schaffen wir mit dem, was wir unter anderem heute tun. Und deshalb bin ich sicher, es wird klappen.
Naomi O'Leary of the Irish Times.
Hi, a question for Taoiseach Leo Varadkar. We've heard a lot of talk about Ireland potentially being a powerhouse in the export of wind energy. I wonder if you could give any figures in terms of what that would mean to the Irish economy. Can you give any sense of the size of potential exports, like revenues, the jobs this might mean? And then also, what level of public investment is required to bring the national grid up to scratch to actually be able to handle something like that? Thanks.
So Ireland as a country requires about 6 gigs of electricity to satisfy our own needs, but that's going to increase dramatically as we electrify our transport systems and more industry goes electric as well. But the target that we've set for renewables for offshore wind is 30. So roughly 5 times the amount of energy that we currently use. And that's a hugely ambitious target, but one that we believe we can achieve. It's not just about offshore wind, although it'll be mainly about offshore wind. It's also about solar as well as onshore wind too, and using that for our own energy needs, but also to produce green hydrogen, which is going to be one of the fuels of the future, as the President Commissioner said. Also synthetic aviation fuels, so that we can continue to fly, maybe not as frequently as we do now, but still when we need to. And also to make green fertilizer, which I think would be very beneficial for agriculture in particular, because at the moment we use fertilizers that are nitrogen-based and oil-based, and if we could change to green fertilizers, that would be much better for lots of different reasons. When it comes to the investment, we're going to need a combination of public investment and private investment. It's going to take many billions, tens of billions, we believe. But crucially, I think we need to understand that this form of public investment is public investment that will pay for itself, because people and businesses pay for electricity. Ultimately, the capital cost is recovered, and you then start to make a profit. So a lot of public investment that we make is really important and really valuable, but it never turns a profit. Investment in energy will turn a profit. So the first couple of years, the first couple of decades, it covers the capital cost, but after that it becomes profit making. So it's a huge economic opportunity as well. And let's not forget that the fuel that powers wind energy is free, not like oil or gas. It's free, and all you need to do is install the equipment and install the grid, although the grid is going to be a huge job. And I think what we're going to need is a master grid, a super grid for all of Europe. If you think of our grid that we have at the moment, like roads, we still are running off local and regional roads, and now we need to build European energy motorways, essentially, to harness that offshore energy and bring it all over Europe.
Next question by Tim Morizet by RTL.
Hey. So Luxembourg is currently importing 80% of its electricity from abroad. How can nations like Luxembourg, smaller nations, profit from this cooperation? Is that going to mean 100% green energy imports in the future?
So I'm very proud to tell you that we were able last year, for the first time in our history, to have renewable energy covering all the private households. This is new for Luxembourg. This was not the case before. I think that to say that the whole economy and industry will be covered by renewable energy tomorrow would be a lie. So we are looking for all the opportunities that we can have to see. This is with Denmark, where I told you that we signed an agreement. This is why I'm sitting here. where we try to find, to push also the colleagues. So it is important for the continent, but it's also important for Luxembourg. We saw how dependent. I just want to remind, because I think we forgot that a few months ago we were asking ourselves when will be a possible blackout on energy. We all forgot. But that was a situation we had where we were, and thank you, Ursula, for all you did with the commissions to see how we would be able to continue to produce, to have energy, and trying not to punish or to do obligations, but trying to sensibilize people to reduce the energy. And we were able. So I think it will be a mixture of renewable energies from here, renewable energies, as I told you before, with initiatives that we want to have with solar panels also on the different households, and different projects with Denmark and with other countries. Also the hydrogen is a future where we have to see where we can work together. There are some energy sources, as you know, we don't believe in it. We don't think that they are sure and green. But there are so many opportunities. That's the reason why I'm so happy to be here today, to support these kind of initiatives.
Next question by Petra Jan Broers, ANP. No?
Or not.
Hello, everybody. My name is Petra Jan Broers, ANP. My question is really for Mrs. von der Leyen. Building all these wind parks costs a lot of nitrogen emission. It means that a lot of builders cannot get the permits they need, and it's not going as fast as they like. I know this is one of the things that the member states need to do, but can the Commission help out a little bit in this? How do you tackle this problem?
Yes, if I understand you well, it's about the permitting processes that last too long still today. This is the reason why together we have introduced an emergency law last year that says basically that member states are able to define so-called go-to areas. And if these areas are defined, there is legally an overriding public interest. And this makes it possible that the permitting processes can be reduced to less than 1 year. This was the emergency regulation we did last year. Now we have transformed this transformed the emergency regulation into the so-called RED 3, Renewable Energy Directive 3. This has just been agreed, so it's now cast in law, and this gives a big advantage to have slim and fast permitting procedures for example, the building of wind parks that are necessary.
I have a last question by Simon Eckern, NRK.
Yes, thank you. It's a question for the Commission President. Norway has wanted to look for more oil and gas in vulnerable Arctic regions, and this was a complex issue in the talks before the pact that you signed today and the Green Alliance. Now you've stated several times how thankful you've been for Norway's support, but how green a country is Norway really in these new ongoing decisions about a new energy reality, in your view?
So in the many talks that I had with you, Jonas, I could see how genuine and true the very ambitious green transformation is. And yes, of course, you are a resource-rich country, what, for example, gas is concerned. But it is impressive to see the enormous investment you're doing in green energies. And the Green Alliance is basically working together on all different strands for the green transformation, be it supporting each other when it comes to global targets, or supporting each other, for example, when it comes to developing the renewables, but also supporting each other when it comes to research and development. Carbon capture and storage is a very interesting field that we're working on together. Green hydrogen has been mentioned already. And over time, of course, it's important for us that, for example, the infrastructure we build is one day hydrogen ready. So you see a whole concept behind it. It's the very first green alliance the European Union has with a European country. It's only the second we have at all. And there's a good reason why we choose, and we're glad to have Norway by our side.
And the Arctic discussions?
We found, I think, a very good balance between the two necessary points. And this is summarized in the Green Alliance, the balance that is necessary to protect, of course, the Arctic region, but also to have the necessary approach to existing fields that you're looking at.
Well, I support everything the Commission President said. Let me just say that Norway is in transition from oil and gas to renewable. And I think we're all safe by making that transition in a responsible manner. And half of the increase of Norway's gas export to Europe this last year comes from a site outside Hammerfest, which is definitively in the Arctic. It's LNG coming into European ports. But that site at Hammerfest is at the same time known for extracting CO2 and depositing that under the seabed for eternity, which is a technology which is now being highlighted. So I really believe that we have to be partners in this. If we do a transition by closing one chapter one day to open a new one the next day, we will fail. And I think one part of the vulnerability for Europe last year was that when Russian gas disappeared, there was not enough renewable to fill the space. Now we are moving ahead impressively to fill that space, and Norway will do its part in that green transition.
Okay, thank you. Don't run away. There is a press conference of the energy ministers as well, and it would be sad if they would have an empty room, so please stay around. If I can just ask my colleagues to do a last group picture together with our two representatives of the Youth Council, and then we will move out.
Industry. It will support innovation and, very important, the manufacturing at scale. Industry Act that will
Ik bedoel 1 deel of 2 deel. 1 en wat dan ook.